welcome to On the Entrepreneur's Journey, the show where we explore how founders build companies that scale, evolve, and ultimately run without them. I'm your host, Peter Santry, leadership team coach and Summit OS business guide. Today, I'm joined by Shauna Sweeney, founder and CEO of TenderCare, a company on a mission to build the elder care infrastructure of the world. Shauna went from a talent at Meta, working with some of the most sought-after people in tech, to tackling one of the most overlooked and emotionally charged sectors in our economy, caregiving. Her journey began as a daughter navigating care for her own father and discovering an industry still running on fax machines and binders. We'll talk about her leap from big tech to mission-driven entrepreneurship, how she built a team without perks or a brand name, and how AI is reshaping the speed of starting a company. And we'll end up with her vision for making aging less scary and multi-generational care more stable. Quick disclosure, my wife Mimi is an advisor and investor in TenderCare, and her work with the team has given me a firsthand view of both the challenges and the enormous opportunity in the space. So welcome to the show, Shauna.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. Well, let's dive in because I find your story so interesting. And it starts with your personal experience working across the country from your dad, and how did that experience open your eyes to how broken and inefficient and low tech the caregiving space was, and caused you to jump in?
It's, it even begins, I think, before tender care, decades before. I was raised by my dad as a single parent. And so for any of you out there who have a similar experience, these relationships are just so tight. My dad was both my mom and my dad to me growing up. He was at Brownie meetings. He was my soccer coach. And so we've just been incredibly close and learned to partner in ways that have carried us through long into adulthood. Now, when I moved to New York, these were early days for Facebook. It was wildly exciting to be working in the tech sector. We were hitting milestones that no tech company had ever accomplished before, 1 billion users. We were talking about essentially creating tools for the entire population of humanity at this point. And it was a really good time to understand the power of tech. At the same time, we got really bad news at one of my dad's annual checkups. He's a ship captain, and so very, very important that he is in top health. Went to an annual checkup and started to get some feedback that we were already starting to get a little suspicious of, that he was starting to show signs of early dementia. In his case, it ended up being early onset Alzheimer's. I knew nothing about this illness, and all I knew was that just like everything that had come before in our lives, I was going to be my dad's partner in this. No matter what, we'll get stuck in and we're going to figure this out together.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Alzheimer's is a pretty intense new set of challenges to deal with. And this was really hard for my dad and I, especially since I lived across the country from him. I had a very intense job. I was leading industry relations, competitive intelligence, a lot of our partner marketing, community marketing at Facebook, basically everything. There's a very large team underneath me, and I'm trying to understand this new chapter we have entered into that I had no idea I was being signed up to almost a full-time job to sit down and really help my dad work through a lot of this. What we did know is that my dad, like everything in his life, wanted to approach this with the same competitive spirit, ferocity of determination and dignity and independence that he has ultimately shown and role modeled for me in almost every other aspect of life. And I wanted to make sure that we could set up an environment in which he could do that. Started to hit roadblocks one after another in what is ultimately a very universal experience for families who have gone through this process. Turns out you get a diagnosis for Alzheimer's and you're sent out the doctor's office and into this very scary experience on the other side. Very unnerving and unbalancing in that what you don't realize is the doctors are not going to fix this for you. There's actually no fix for Alzheimer's. And
Right.
This has now changed every aspect of life. What does this look like for transportation? You can't drive when you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. How are you now going to think about your meals? How are you going to go to grocery shopping? How are you going to recalibrate your entire life around getting to the doctor's appointments on time, making sure that you're taking the right medications? This is a lot coming at a family really fast. And to your point, you mentioned this earlier, very little technology around this. So I started living in this tale of two worlds, one in which I'm working at Facebook, crushing through milestones of releasing different products that we all have become very familiar with across Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp eventually. And at the same time, trying to find my way with my dad through what the experience is like for a family who is now living with Alzheimer's and all of the ripple effects of what that now means across your finances, across your insurance, across your day-to-day living, that there isn't a really great playbook for. This was a hard world for us to be navigating together, really, really difficult. And so I guess what I'd just say before, you know, getting into anything about what we do now is this is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. It is 7 different layers of hell. and
Yeah.
and so I come to you a
Mhm.
survivor of
Mhm.
living through these circles of hell with a very specific background in tech that informed a lot of how we started to problem solve our way through this.
Right, right. So when did you say, I mean, first of all, I don't know how you slept during that
Not
period.
much.
Two full-time jobs and one obviously very emotionally charged. So commend you for surviving that period. But when did you say, okay, um, this is not only a challenge I face, but I'm really going to do something about it because that's really you had to make that decision, and then of course that cascaded into changing careers and everything else. But when did you decide that you wanted to actually make a dent in this problem?
Mm. It's a really interesting question because I don't think there was a light bulb moment that went off. I've now, my dad and I guess the update here is I've been on this journey with him for 15 years. Knock on wood, we're still going strong. My dad is now in mid-stage Alzheimer's. But there was years and years of me marinating in this cascade of problems with him. And so, I continued to work at
Mm.
Facebook. I continued to try and show up like all of us do, my best version of myself at work for my team, for my company, and then also as a daughter. And this was just terrible. This was like things breaking all the time that had massive implications. I missed a deadline for renewing my dad's health insurance. Try getting someone with Alzheimer's covered after that. Like, this is just
Yeah,
not something you want to do. And it's because it was paper mail that got sent to his mailbox, and I was in New York, so I wasn't opening his mail. Um, these are really hard lessons. They feel terrible. And so you start to add up or accrue enough of these terrible things. And, I'm half Irish. So maybe this is part of what this looks like, but enough of these injustices, if you will,
yeah.
start to really
Start
piss me
shaking your
off.
fist. Yeah,
like, like, come on. I can't
yeah,
take I possibly can't take another one that feels so deeply unfair and unfair for the wrong reasons, like systemically unfair. This is a motivation of an adult child trying to do right by someone who is now sick and needs my help. And the system feels stacked against those like me doing this. So I got really, really pissed off. I think that's the first piece. And this is after
yeah.
years of this. The second piece is I was really lucky in some ways. I grew up the great great granddaughter of an inventor. And so not everyone has an inventor in their family, but
Right.
I grew up, seeing all of the patents that my great great grandpa had filed and created, inventions. A lot were in jet parts. He was a mechanical engineer. Um, his most famous was the tater tot.
Oh
And
my gosh.
and what that does, I think, to a child growing up with all of these stories of what invention looks like, what innovation looks like, it opens a door to possibilities that, hey, the world that we are living in right now doesn't have to be the world we're always living in. You can bring your own ideas to this world and legitimately fix things. So, I think having seen so many of these problems, I was already coming from a mindset of, well, problems can be fixed. And, for better or worse, this felt like the set of problems I was handed to really roll my sleeves up and start to fix.
So you just had that gave you the confidence to say, there is a better outcome, and I've seen my great grandfather. I've at least read about it and seen it, so I could be that person. So that starts dawning on you, and it gives you the confidence. But then you still have to make that decision. You're at Meta or Facebook at the time. Great pay, unlimited resources, groundbreaking work, surrounded by fantastically smart and capable people, and you're going to starting from scratch with no brand, no perks, no nothing, and no safety net. So what did that transition feel like? I mean, you obviously leapt into it, and did you ever sort of look back and say, I kind of maybe shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an insane thing to do, right? There's not a lot of
Yes.
self-preservation
Yes, that
attached
would have
to
been that would have been the simpler question to ask. Are you insane?
I might be
Yeah,
a little, you
yeah,
know, I, if you get the call to fix something, it's sitting there inside you. It's like a pebble in your shoe. And so I lived
yeah.
with this for several years and it was growing stronger and stronger. I was the moderator and admin for an employee resource group inside Facebook that I started that ended up quite by surprise turned into like around 4,000 of us who were
Wow.
actively taking care of our parents or our spouses or our grandparents. And so I was hearing from this community and it was validating to me that there was this huge problem that was unsolved. I could have paid any amount of money for someone to just give me the set of solutions I needed to make my dad's and my life easier, but it just wasn't there. So this is
Right.
really annoying. But I can't say that I just decided one day to leave. This is a really insane thing to do. You know, I had a mortgage. I had responsibilities. I'm an adult. This feels like a crazy thing, after having built up a career in, a place that, to your point, is considered, one of the top places to work if you work in tech. And why give all of this up? I've spent now years and years becoming an executive. Uh, you know, I think there's two parts to this, which is be careful what you get good at. And to me, I think where my strengths really lie are sitting down with root problems and starting to build out the beginnings of those solutions. I'm not as good with maintenance, right? And so once
Hmm.
you've had a groomed set of products are quite mature at this point, which Facebook was getting to that point,
Hmm.
there were others who were much more capable, many of them on my team who'd worked for me for years, who could really take that charge and lead it. A whole line of people waiting for my role. And so I think there has to be some set of like intellectual and also principled honesty with yourself of like, is this the best place for me to be spending my efforts? I'm going to work hard wherever I am, but where could I do this that's going to have the maximal impact and the maximal value for other people? And to me, that calculation was for me to take off and ultimately start to build in this space. But it is
That's
insane and
yeah,
huge financial risk,
yeah.
obviously. I would say the last thing here is normalizing failure. I spent a good year and a half just spending time with others who had already made the decision to leave their comfortable posts and go out and build. And who you spend time with really changes your perception and framing of what's possible in your own life. And after about a year and a half of really clocking time with other founders, I started to look at failure much differently, I think, than the classical sense of like, wow, if this isn't some breakout grand slam success, I've really just screwed up my whole life. And instead looked at it as an adventure.
So it's interesting. You took stock of your capabilities and building rather than maintaining, which is kind of like the stage of an entrepreneurial company where you go from building a product, actually, dealing with all the customers and the updates and all that, you said, I'm better at this first thing. And then you got validation from speaking to these other founders that it was going to be a different journey. There was going to be downsides. There was going to be potholes, and you started to get comfortable with that and said, okay, it's a little bit less of a leap, and it aligns more with my capabilities anyway. So that's interesting. So you're now launched, you've made the leap, not never to go back. And now you have to hire, the same people you were kind of working with to create
Right.
what your product was. And you no longer have the brand and all that sort of stuff. So tell me about the early recruiting process to get, the tech people of the caliber that you were working with to come over and become, join forces with you to tackle this problem.
This is super hard, right? Because you have nothing and you have to somehow convince other really smart, talented people that this is a good idea for
Yeah.
them to leave their comfortable positions, oftentimes, and come with you. The ones who don't have comfortable positions, you always kind of have a raised eyebrow, like, well, why not? What's wrong with
Right.
you? Right.
Right. Right.
Um, and, I think the best advice I got was from another founder who I just love talking to other founders because they just cut straight through the BS. And she was actually, I think it was the same day that she was selling her company. She'd been working on it for 10 years. I was just asking for advice from everyone. She was like, my first employee was my babysitter. Don't let them tell you you need geniuses surrounding you to get started. Just start. Who is available? Get moving. And that to me was so profound. It was the permission, the green light that went off of just go. You're going to figure this out and figure out who happens to be at the right moment in time and is available to actually go out and do this with you. So I just started. I started, talking to people, interviewing, asking for connections, who's interested in going out and starting a startup. I also didn't wait for that either. I was like, well, I've got some savings, I've been working in tech for some time. I'm going to allocate a certain amount of savings and I'm just going to go out and, work with some agencies who are designed to just be able to work with me as a client to get moving on a prototype here. So I did that with a creative agency. I did that with a development agency in the very beginning. I knew that the fire inside me was going to ultimately bring people in around the campfire, if you will. But I wasn't going to wait for permission of somebody else ready to jump in with me. So I actually started with agencies. I ended up taking the agency, it was a two-part agency, and bringing one of the people who had started to work with me as a client in full time as my first hire. And to me, that was the light bulb moment, which is like, you're going to go with where you have access and resource and leverage. And then you're going to use every human skill you have to start to build that pipeline of talent to come in. And then the net benefits of that make the second hire even easier, the third hire even easier, and so on. So I didn't wait, ultimately, is the answer. I just
Right.
started to go.
Right. And what I find interesting about any hire, there are two components of it. There's the ability to do the job, but then there's also the cultural fit and aligning with your why. And
Totally.
you had a very powerful why. How did that help you attract people? Were there people that said, "I'm so in love with your mission and what you're trying to do that, yes, I'm willing to jump and take my talents and try to solve this." Did that make it easier, to attract talent?
Yeah, I think everyone wants to feel good about the work they do. You want to leave a really hard day feeling like that mattered and
Hmm.
this did something that's going to help people. That's just an inherently human thing. And so I think we have an advantage in that there are many people who have experienced, this is universal aging, illness. This is not something that's niche, have experienced some degree of this and can understand personally what type of impact we're after. So that certainly has helped us in the recruiting process. But I always optimize for why over skill set. I generally find that what you're hiring for is not always what you end up putting that person into the seat to do. And the skill set that makes sense at that given time, most skill sets can be learned, by the way, especially now. Like almost everyone
Right.
should be a full stack maker. But especially at the time when I was starting tender care, you wanted to look for the why. What was going to be the heart and the fire inside of someone that was going to push them through learning something new, helping you problem solve, ultimately something that hasn't been solved before? Way more important than looking for degrees, looking for a perfect match of someone's background. Because honestly, if you don't have the character, you don't have the attitude, then the rest of it doesn't matter.
Right, right. And you're creating missionaries, and that's what you want, and that's the commitment you need in a startup. And I find that, your why creates, leads to hiring missionaries if you're doing it. I love that. I love that you hire for the why. I think that's really interesting. So let's move to the more sort of technology side of this. So you're a technologist. What shocked you the most, and as you looked at the space, and then what did you want to fix first? I mean, what did you winnow down to being your first sort of prototypical product?
I mean, when you're talking about family caregiving, which is what we're talking about here, caring ultimately, there's a lot of people who don't realize they're caregivers. They're leaning in, helping a family member. They're not getting paid for this. There's a lot of siren calls for building product in this space because everyone will give you the same chief complaint. Everything's everywhere. I've got, weird paper mail. I've got things in filing cabinets. I have
Right.
no idea who my parents even go to for their doctors or their specialists. And like, God knows they're terrible at organizing. They're a
Yeah.
hoarder, like whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And they'll tell us the same thing. I just want everything in one place. The system is not designed for this right now. It is like by design, fragmented like nobody's business. And it's crazy when you're an adult child trying to pull all these pieces together. So we went after the first siren call. This is a false flag, which is like, oh, if we just make it super easy for people to pull all their information into one place, connect up their my chart, figure out all their health records, get, Sally Joe and Aunt Sue to give us some of the information we need. We can store it in one place. Bingo, we're going to have solved a major problem. Okay, this is a terrible mistake. And here's why. Here's why. And I give everyone this who's interested in this space after like so much scar tissue of having started to build here. We went to clearinghouses, we did all of this API integration to bring all this data together, thinking surely, okay, all we need to do is build the pipes and then,
Right.
it's going to be really easy. Okay.
So-
Yeah, no. And here's why. So much of those records, they are locked in these tiny little specific databases and systems all over the place that have their own tech teams. And sometimes those are high priorities and sometimes they're not. And so the idea of everything in one place, bringing everyone's health records into one place, maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, that's going to be possible. Right now, you can hook up all the pipes to all of the different health systems. They still won't return a lot of that medical information because they're broken. And so what I found very early when we first started was we ended up getting in the business accidentally of customer service for all of these different health systems to let them know that their databases weren't working. And pretty quickly realized we are going to go under if our whole business promise lies on, the assumption that all of this data is actually accessible without a lot of human intervention across the country, and that is not the place I wanted to die on, and so we had to bank out of that really, really fast and figure out, shoot, everybody wants the thing that is actually not possible. So what value are we actually going to give to them to help them in taking care of their parents, to make decisions that's going to feel equally valuable, but that I can actually promise and deliver on? Not an easy bank or pivot, if you will. And
Right.
that led to a lot of different very hard product decisions that changed the entire focus of our company.
And so what did you settle on? What was the first thing?
I mean, first we were like, oh shit,
Yeah,
what are we going to do? And this is painful. You know, they talk about this startups, momentum is everything. We're like sharks, right? If you're not moving, you're dead.
right.
And suddenly, this cold realization of here's the thing we've been working on for 6 months, it's impossible. Uh-oh. And so it was like, well, let's stand up a community. We know people like to talk to each other. We're going to do that while we're trying to figure this out. And I'm sitting there and it's back to the drawing board, and you get this like sinking feeling. For me, you know, other founders experience this differently. For me, it feels like I want to throw up. And I have gotten so familiar with the feeling of wanting to throw up. So like you just have to get ready for that. I think there's like an actual biological reason for this, but it was a lot of like sitting staring at a wall, knowing I have only a little bit of time to redirect the team, feeling like I wanted to throw up. We ultimately ended up realizing that, hey, there was actually a real possible avenue through thinking about preparedness and organization around preparedness. So that sent us down a whole different level of inquiry. What does it look like to get prepared for aging, to put things in place, you know, plans in place that actually help a family navigate a lot of these
Mhm.
different decisions? And that led us down a whole different avenue of what are these preparation lists look like? What does it look like to get prepared for the doctor's visit, to advocate for your loved one, to have all the right information in order to make these different moments feel much more empowered? This ultimately led us to emergency preparedness. And so we took a pretty big bank off of that and switched over into basically, I guess the highlight of this would be, well, if I can't rely on the medical system, we're going to have to figure out our own system entirely, and we're going to start building outside of industry. This is a really key psychological moment for me as a founder,
Mhm.
which is no wonder we don't exist already, because the system rejects the ability to actually help within it. I'm going to have to start building outside of the system entirely. So let's all pack up our bags and head for Siberia.
Right, right. And it ended up being the emergency readiness and led into the card, the app, the QR code that enables, you know, emergency responders to capture the information that they need so that they can serve the person who's fallen or whatever. And that became your sort of
That's right.
first product, right? I mean,
That's right. And it's absolutely insane for a tech company to start producing printed QR codes and handing
yeah.
these out. Like
Paper, come on.
you try telling this to a VC with a straight face. Like, here's this high tech company that's going to change the future of elder care, and we're gonna do it through printers and QR codes, and watch how many laugh.
Yeah,
And I think half of this journey has been understanding and sitting with the truth of where the problem leads you. The truth told me I need to get out of behind a screen and into the real world where care is actually happening. I need to physically, tangibly put something into those who are trusted's hands to understand what we're doing. And I need to be in service of the solution so much that I'm okay with being humiliated and laughed at in all of these rooms and spaces in which the more classical solution, which hasn't worked, by the way, for
right.
teams and teams and teams, is the accepted solution and the expected solution. And so I'm going to need to bank into offering something that looks so wildly different from everyone else, and being okay with being laughed at while being in incredibly high conviction that this is the right path for us.
I mean, I love the way you pivoted and said this, you know, we can't make this work given where the industry is and where information is. And, you know, for technologists, that's hard. And to reboot somewhere else, I think is incredible. Um, so tell me, you've also built community. I mean, that's the other side of this, which is getting people prepared for the aging process. You've gone out and you've built communities by almost by zip code, where you arrange the people who support caregivers in this journey. Tell us a little bit about that service or that offering that you have that's really getting some great traction.
I mean, we're building the elder care marketplace. There's 400,000 mom and pop shops across the country. Some of them might be your neighbors. You don't even realize it. You drive by them every day on your way to CVS or Walgreens or the supermarket. And these are the individuals in everyone's town, Main Street, USA, who have committed their lives to actually being a part of the solution. These are the elder law attorneys. These are the senior placement experts. These are the geriatric care managers or aging life care managers. These are the real estate brokers who are helping grandma sell her home. Most of her assets are tied up into her home. That's all of her savings for how you as a family are likely going to be able to make decisions around her care. Now, all of these experts exist. Until you are at this chapter, almost everyone has never heard of a lot of these professions. And so they're actually very hard to find on Google. You don't even have the right search terms. You sometimes don't live in the same town. So the many ways that you find these professionals, typically through word of mouth, don't work for the modern family today. And so what we realized we could add real value around and sort of rewrite the proper dynamics of a marketplace built off of quality across an intelligent, educated, confident consumer was to better match up this group of 400,000 different businesses across the country and more. It's growing, by the way, to a family that doesn't have the words or the local network to search for them, and cut out all of the research and really be the family's advocate in making a lot of these matches on their behalf. Now, this has been so exciting for us because we're essentially stitching together a marketplace across 16 different services that all go into what it means to age today into one place to find them, one super easy place to find them. And this is ultimately category creating, a front door for modern aging that has not existed. If you think about this right now, there is no Zillow, there's no Amazon for the way that we age, the way that we think about services, products. And so we've already started to bring all of the best, most high quality professionals in each zip code onto our platform. What's even cooler is they're the reason we can keep the lights on. So by participating in our vetting, our auditing, we spend an incredible amount of time with each of these businesses, understanding what makes them tick, what makes them unique, why we would recommend them, why we'd bring them into our own family. They pay a annual membership fee to be part of this network and part of the platform alongside us, which allows us to offer all of our tools to families for free. It's an amazing benefit. It's a very virtuous marketplace. So every single business that comes on adds more value to families. Every family that comes on adds more value to these businesses that are looking to serve them.
Wow. I can't wait to see how this rolls out, because it's the community aspect I find so fascinating, and sort of the networking effect you can get from that is really cool. So let's tack away to something that was kind of a serendipitous conversation. But since you're a technologist, I'd love your view on this. Obviously, AI has, burst on the scene. Everybody's talking about it. And how, your entrepreneurial journey would be totally different today. Can you explain how AI could have shortcut your sort of fundraising, and getting you to your goals more quickly today, if you started, today versus, 5 years ago?
I mean, pre AI, building tech was so wildly expensive. Just to give you a sense, I was reading this, I think this morning, right before the early first .com boom, Netscape, Evite, the greeting card company, I think it had like 282 full-time engineers. Like, do you know how much money that costs to be able to have that many people on payroll? And this is for a holiday greeting card company. So I say this because any founder looking to start a company or build tech pre-AI was looking at enormous capital costs, just startup costs. This made it very, very difficult for anyone to justify taking this leap. You needed to come to the poker table with quite a few chips and high
Right.
conviction to be willing to go out and build. Today, I liken when I started Tender Care, I had an abacus, right? Like I'm like sitting there,
Yeah.
everyone's got like their T9 Texas Instruments now, and it's, an incredible barrier dropper to being able to go out and build. You can stand up a prototype that, would have cost sometimes somewhere to the tune of like $100,000 before, and go show this to VCs, tell a compelling story why you are the credible, competent founder and you have the means to go out and solve a problem in the space of a weekend. Now, what would have taken months and months and capital investments, of being able to go out and hire a tech team to do. It's why you saw so many developer founders then, because they could code themselves. And so they could save on a lot of those costs. We have now opened up the gates to incredibly smart people living with problems across the board who may or may not have had a technical background. You can truly, if you are motivated, be a full stack maker at this point. And so I am so excited to see who the next round of founders are. I think they're going to look very different than the classes that happened pre-AI. You just couldn't get through the gates often if you were non-technical. I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I worked in tech. I was not actually in the developer side. And so I kind of squeezed through. I was highly motivated. I knew enough to be dangerous. I had lived in this world, but now I can't wait to see who comes out of this and, demonstrates a whole new face to founding, with a subscription to Lovable. Like, this is going to go in a whole different direction. It's also going to have implications, I can think, across the funding environment. We don't need capital in the same way that we did. We don't need to hire as much as
Thank
we used
God.
to. Yeah.
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 And so it's much more efficient. And so the case for why we need to take on money needs to change as well. So I think you're going to see all kinds of interesting ripple effects of this, both from what is created, who creates it, and then how it's funded moving forward. That's
Yeah.
going to change a lot of the typical funding architecture you've seen in the past.
That's going to be interesting, and I'm equally intrigued by how it's going to play out. So let's move towards your future vision. You've got the emergency sort of product out there. You're building these communities one by one across the country. So what's next as you build out the elder care infrastructure for caregivers? What do you see?
I'm actually going to show you one of these. I'm just going to pull it up here real quick. These are our tender IDs. Now, this is why I look insane, right? As a tech founder, going
Right.
out and handing these out. But here's what I can also say. For instance, in the last month alone, this is all inbound organic. We've had requests for over 40,000 of these tender IDs. This is through departments of aging. This is through senior nonprofits for the elderly. This is through fire departments. This is through EMTs. And you have to go where the problem is, and the world will let you know if you solved it. And so I say this because it's an incredibly effective acquisition tool that we have earned. And what you're looking for as a founder is, have you earned your right to be adopted and accepted? And it is earned, right? This isn't like you can pull something over on some population. We're all wildly smart, right? I think that's my favorite part of being a founder is you really respect the end consumer. You respect, just how high a bar is required to actually build or bring something new into the world. And so I say that with where we are today, which is bringing all of the people and all of the elder care businesses onto tender care. We need to pull this together in a way that does not currently exist. It's been hyper fragmented. It makes it incredibly hard for a family. In order to do this, we need to go hyper local, and we need to be everywhere. Kind of like a winner take all environment, like an Airbnb. You have a Vrbo, but really there's just Airbnb. And so what does this look like to have the modern aging marketplace? It looks like tender care. So we are hard focused on bringing all the people and all the businesses on today. We know, though, that once this infrastructure is built, what's next for us? I want you to picture a world in which, and we will have this is a certainty, someone in your circle, could be a close friend, a childhood friend, a relative, they are on the receiving end of someone in their family's life, a diagnosis that is life-changing. Could be Parkinson's, could be Alzheimer's, like my own family. A lot of things have to change as a result of that. Today, there's about a 6-month window of trying to figure out what is required of a family to help. What is the care plan? what is the key information you need?
Mhm.
Who do you work with? The next step for us is actually we shorten that window. We go from 6 months to 24 hours. You get a diagnosis in your hands, you immediately have a care plan. You have a list of all the most important information. In fact, we're going to help you pull it all together. And then you're going to have 3 local resources in your aunt's area that you can actually trust with confidence are the best expert professionals in that area to start to have first conversations with. And we're going to equip you with the right questions to ask. So that's coming. We're going to get predictive, proactive. And then where we're going after that, now we're really going into future state of what tender care is bringing to the world. Imagine a world now where we have all the people, we have all the data. We now can get way smarter about equipping people with what they need to be prepared for aging. So picture a world in which a 45-year-old daughter of someone is able to proactively go out and buy long-term care insurance by us partnering with, insurance partners for their parents 5 years before their mom is diagnosed with Parkinson's, saving them $200,000, $300,000 as a family down the line. That's where tender care is building towards. We want to equip all of our families with the right infrastructure to protect each other, to keep each other safe, and ultimately to make sure that aging does not become this devastating financial burden and loss on families. We think there are way smarter ways to get at this, and there's products that we are waiting to build that we can't wait to get after.
Right.
And that's the world that I ultimately want to leave for my kids.
Right. So the first step, which is today, is instead of walking in the wilderness when you walk out of the doctor's office, you're going to equip them with a roadmap telling them where to go, who's the guide you need for whatever the problem is to get you where you want to go, which I think is, and shortening that sort of that wandering process to 24 hours or something. And I think that'll be, the peace of mind that will bring sounds fantastic. And then, of course, beyond that, to be proactive so that you can actually plan this future is certainly, brings huge efficiencies. So I think that's a very laudable goal.
We've got to
Well,
redefine how we age, right?
yeah,
We're always on the back heel of this, and yet it's a certainty. We know this from the minute we're born, and we put it off, and we're scared, and we don't have a lot of the right answers. We lack confidence. We're on a mission to change all that.
yeah, yeah. Well, Shauna, thank you for your time, and I know the world is going to benefit from what you're doing, and we're super supportive here. And again, thank you for coming on, and for the audience, thank you for listening to On the Entrepreneur's Journey. And until next time, we'll see you. Thanks,
My
Shauna.
pleasure. Thank you.